and welcome back to the Indian Debating League and this series called the Circle of Champions. Today we have a person who I believe can be called the champion of champions, a person who's not only won the WUDC but also been the chief adjudicator at the WSTL, a person who's not only formulated arguments but formulated arguments and formulated teams of the future. Recently we had a discussion with Luigi who gave a lot of props to David as well, which prompted me to sort of bringing up my list and reach out even earlier than I was supposed to, quite frankly, right? So I am honored to have this discussion with you, especially amidst this Cambridge Debating Union conference going on for schools, right? You've been very graceful with your time. So thank you so much for that. I think diving into it all, I would love to ask you the first question. Everybody knows your achievements, but who are you?
Well, it's nice to meet you. I'm David. I'm doing my master's at Cambridge in computer science. I like to run, I like to hike. I'm pretty much done with my career as a debater, but I guess before I quit, I was a world champion. I was a 4-time Asian champion, an Australs champion, and a 2-time national champion. Other than that, I coached around for a bit. I think I'm currently helping out with the World Schools team for Philippines, and I'm going to be capping the World's Sophia Worlds at the end of this year. So hope to see some of you there.
That sounds fantastic, and I think for a lot of people, you are an inspiration, right? But I want to know who is your inspiration.
Yeah, I guess from the most high level inspiration from the very beginning has always been my grandfather. My grandfather has always been very well spoken and very thoughtful about how he would convince me to do things like, we should play badminton in the morning even if you don't want to wake up because it's good for you. Other than that, the first person who really introduced me to debate was actually Luigi. He was the person who went up during our graduation practice, and then he spoke to the entire batch and was like, if anybody wants to try out for our summer practice, which I tried out. And I was like, okay, I'll give it a shot. Other than that, my first English teacher who really believed in me, he told me actually to start with like spelling contests. I used to be a really shy kid. I couldn't really go through a straight sentence without stuttering. So for me, the people I really remember were those who believed in me, who told me I was good before I was good. So my partners, Matty, my very first long-term partner in high school debate, to a lot of my partners now, Miko, especially Miko Vitog, who's like such a kind debater, very earnest, and makes you reflect on how you should be in the community and who you should try to emulate. I mean, the list of people is too many to name, but I did write an essay where I named everybody who was super significant to me at the time, right after I won Worlds. So I wrote that essay and posted it on Facebook and everything. By now that list has increased a little bit and changed a little bit, but by and large, I'm really grateful to everybody who helped me grow on my journey.
Could you share this list with me as well, perhaps after this interview? I'd love to go through it. Can I link it also?
It's like an essay on my personal page on Facebook.
In that file, okay.
Yeah, but if you want to, it's public, right? So you can.
Okay, perfect. That's great. I've noticed that you have this sense of, I would say, community. Even before this interview, you mentioned to me you want to give back to the community, right? So I would love to know where that comes from and how you feel the community that you've been surrounded by in debating has shaped your journey.
For a lot of people, I think they have a very negative relationship to debating because as a sport, it can be very difficult. As a sport, it has its downsides. I'm sure there's many scandals and drama, and in general, even if you have none of that, if you're fortunate and none of that, you're in the vicinity of none of that, it's just very difficult. It can be very difficult, especially if you tie a lot of your self-esteem to performance in a sport that's inherently stochastic. I would say the thing that's always helped me get through it was the feeling like, I had other people around me to believe in me when that belief faltered, when my own belief faltered. It's seeing really brilliant people give arguments that inspires you to take those arguments and see if you can apply them in different debates or try them at other levels. I think the reason why debate is good can be boiled down to people giving back when it doesn't matter or when it doesn't benefit them. And I think, I'm just paying it forward. Like what I see is, as my career, I think some people who see it as like individual exceptionalism. I think there's the invisible support of so many different people that I can't give back to them one by one, right? The best thing I can do is just see if I can help out other people in the same way that I was helped before.
I see that. What drew you to debating? Now you've mentioned WUDC as well, but what specifically about the activity got you interested? And firstly, also resilient enough to keep going through any tough time.
So it's like 3 stages. First is when I first started in high school, and I really wanted to just do things. Like debating is a very active extracurricular. So you go out on the weekends, you hang out with your friends, and you know, I just wanted to get out of the house and debate, and it's just one of the activities that lets you go places and see things. Then for a very long time, so after that, I started to do well, and I learned that I really respond well to numerical incentives. I like winning. I like winning a lot, and I think there's really nothing more satisfying than like breaking another team's case over your knee, like just utterly refuting them, winning by 10 points, like a worthy competitor that you have out prepped, out cased, out argued. So I think like the joy of defeat, I think the joy of victory, I think was really compelling for maybe like 5 or 6 years. And then after a while, I took a step back because I saw Belgrade Worlds was really difficult. And in the end, what finally caused me to stay, the reasons you might like or love something, similar to how you might like or love a sport, those will change over time as you change and grow as a person. And finally, what caused me to stay was really like, I just enjoy the sport. I enjoy thinking about problems that are difficult. I enjoy giving speeches that inspire me. Like, I enjoy the thrill of just after you finish prep, you realize I'm going to give an 85. And then what I like to do is I like to commit. I tell my partner, I'm going to give an 85. And I go up and give a speech. More often than not, once you've committed to it, you have to do it, right? So I just sort of like the intellectual activity of it. Get to travel. I mean, I've never really been a traveler, but I think just being worldly, seeing places, meeting people and knowing them, always having a person to take you around in a country that you've never been to before, I mean, that's so cool. So I think debating is a sport that collects a lot of different things that are really nice about life. And I think it's worth sticking out through a lot of the bad parts.
I hear you. I see what you're trying to say as well. Let's talk about your World Championship.
Sure.
Your World Championship victory, and I know you've been to a couple of Worlds now. Which moment across these different experiences at Worlds stuck out the most to you, whether it be something which is good or bad?
Yeah.
And also talk to me about your experience of being a world champion.
So after Toby and I won the World Championship, the first thing we did was we collected the entire Ateneo contingent, and then after taking a photo with the Philippine contingent, we went to Jollibee. So the Jollibee in Madrid is not that good. The chicken is dry. I don't think they had rice. Spaghetti didn't taste like the one at home.
Yeah.
But I think that moment for me was the culmination of a lot of failure over the last. I mean, you collect a lot of failures when you do a lot of worlds. It's like 9 rounds plus like 4 or 5 if you make it to the finals, right? And throughout those rounds, there will be speeches you aren't happy with, speeches you are happy with that wasn't enough to take you to the win. And I was able to reflect on it. We were just sort of like holding onto the trophy, and it did feel real at first. It felt like I'd blink and then I was like, oh, I just woke up from a dream. So that moment stood out to me because I think when I woke up the next day, we had to make it to the flight. I realized I didn't actually feel I didn't feel that much from the triumph of it, right? That I felt a lot of relief and gratitude that Toby was willing to stick it out with me because he was willing to give up one of his worlds for me, and I had tried twice and failed already. So I was like, this is a bad bet. Like 0 out of 2 is pretty bad statistics, but made it 1 out of 3. But what I realized was that I didn't feel so much victory. In fact, I'd already won so much that I think winning doesn't really give a sense of satisfaction anymore because winning a debate round is really different from the satisfaction you get from winning a tournament or a trophy.
Right.
Yeah. Maybe it's like the hedonic treadmill. But after a while, I stopped taking pleasure in winning tournaments, and I was more just relieved that I, as the favorite of a tournament, did not let my teammates down. So that was why I was really afraid of letting Toby down, in the same way that I had let my partners in the last 2 worlds down. And what I realized after winning is that a championship is not important because it makes you the champion. I think a championship is important because it affirms what you should already know to be true, which is that you debate in a style that's true to you, and you debate in a style to the highest of your ability. And if the world decides you're lucky enough to receive it, and you're blessed with the laurels of chance and also success at the right moment, then you should use that to do good. Like use that world champion reputation to help other people, to train, to get people interested in debating. But I mean, it's hard to get a big head when you really realize so much of it was just, it could be taken away from you. Any one of the factors in the last few days could have changed, or in the last few worlds could have changed, and everything could be totally different. But to me, the important realization was, the trophy doesn't make you the champion. It's who you are that makes the championship what it is.
Very insightful. As somebody who's not won worlds yet, perhaps
don't rule it out.
Yeah, I think that's really insightful, and I think it's something which a lot of people will look at, even WSDC perhaps, schools debaters, and look at it as inspiration for sure.
Yeah.
I would also love to hear from you, because you've been chief adjudicator at WSDL, right? You have been such a leadership person, like a leadership figure in Philippines as well when it comes to your debating society in university. I recently read about the fact that I think there was a resolution passed by the Senate.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I think I didn't quite understand, initially what it was, but then when I read it, I actually downloaded the PDF, went through it.
Yeah.
I was shocked to see, the amount of recognition you received, and you come across as so humble even after that, right? So that's a compliment to you. But I would love to know, across all of these things, how do you look at yourself as a leader, and how do you go about mentoring individuals who are coming in wanting to compete at the highest level perhaps, or also simply better the argumentation skills?
Yeah.
And is there a difference between competitive debating and debating in general?
Yes, there is. I'll answer it in reverse order.
Yeah, go for it.
Competitive debating as a sport, I think, has a lot of benefits to it that you don't get from the debating you have at like a pub with your friends, which is that it teaches you to really think about the other side, because you don't get the choice for what side you're in. And it's very fast-paced. You're taught to think on your feet, and even if you have bad ideas, you're forced to be fast, because at least you get rid of the bad ideas faster.
Right.
So I think it teaches a lot of important skills, closer to like pitching or like a startup than like a engaged, thoughtful academic debate where you have to do a lot of research.
Right.
I found actually in my research career that the type of argumentation you do is very different. You have to be very diligent about addressing each subclaim, possible methods or extensions that you might reasonably expect. So I would say competitive debate is different from debate in other settings. Debate's almost a misnomer. It would be more like, I think the discussion of like public forum, public policy, that the naming there might be more accurate. In terms of how I teach and how I think about debate, I think the most important thing is to be very, very aware about where you came from. I actually had the opportunity as an undergrad to study in another university abroad. I wasn't exactly, I didn't choose my university because of debate. Let's make that very, very clear. I had a very good scholarship opportunity at Ateneo, which is why I ended up choosing it. But one of the reasons I thought about was that I wanted to win worlds for the Philippines.
Yeah.
I didn't want to win it for like Cambridge or Columbia, whatever, right? Like, to me, it was important to win it in a way that I could be proud of, right? In a way that gives honor or appreciation to a legacy that I've inherited and benefited from. So in terms of how I think about leadership, I think there's a good reason why the World Championship trophy is not in my house or Toby's house. It's in the org room. It's in the room where I went to train, and I would spend a lot of my time doing homework, and when I napped on the couch, and when we would have food, because the world will forget you. The world will move on from you. In fact, in many cases, I have gone around in tournaments in Europe and pretended to be a novice. And
Pause.
And it's been pretty funny. The world will forget you. The world will definitely forget your YouTube videos, which will like gather cobwebs and dust, or the Wikipedia page where your name is. But I think it's important still to recognize where you came from, because that'll be there with them, even if will have passed from the minds of everybody else. But you sort of add to that cumulative legacy. And I think that leadership philosophy or ideology is important in translating to what you do and what you prioritize. Like, should we prioritize having 1 or 2 really good teams, or should we prioritize having 5 or 6 teams so that we can have as many people get expertise? Should we like have this national tournament that really just mostly runs expense to the organization, and is really hard to set up and provide a lot of scholarships for people in like from the province to come? Even though that's expensive and it's a lot of work, and it hits right at the end of term in Ateneo. I mean, yes, it would be convenient not to do it, but you gotta do it. Like, why else do you do things, right? To give back. Finally, in terms of how you teach competitive debate in general, I think the most important thing is you just always have to bring it back to how do you sound like a normal person? How do you think human thoughts? I think debating, there's like the mid-wit IQ curve where you have like, just give good arguments, just give good examples. I tell this to my students, you just give good examples. And then at the mid-level you have like, you should give 4 structural reasons and you should give all these and all that. But in the end, all that matters is, do these reasons convince the judge? Are these reasons persuasive? There are good structural reasons and there are debate-world structural reasons. And the way you distinguish them is if they make sense to you as a human being. So at the end of the mid-wit curve where you have a very high IQ, give good examples.
Yeah.
Right? So that's how I think about teaching competitive debate, which is you have to be clear, you have to be structured in a way that doesn't take away from the believability. That's what makes debate as a sport interesting, is that you're meant to persuade the average reasonable person.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I think norms have shifted in a way. Back in 2021, 2022, people were speaking really quickly. I mean, I was speaking really quickly, right? Yeah. And that is not how you persuade a normal person. And I think that was maybe one of the key changes that helped me win in 2023, which was you go up, they don't have the luxury of taking laptop notes anymore. You can risk people up in person with your presence. You can fill the room. You can stride around. There's artistry back in the tournament. We just spoke to judges like normal human beings would. Anyway, that's how I answer the questions in reverse.
No, I really appreciate that. And I think there are 2 to 3 points which one has to note over here, right? I think the first thing is you mentioned you wanted to win for Philippines, right? In particular, not any other, not Colombia, not Cambridge, not the UK or US. What you're saying is Philippines, the country, the university that you went to, things of that nature. And I want to sort of focus in on that because Philippines winning and making that historical moment was not just a moment for Philippines, it was a moment for Asian debating circuit as a whole, right? So when people look at somebody who's come from where they are, do really well, it motivates not just quantity but quality of debaters to train more, like think it is possible particularly, right? And also understand how you persuaded an audience like that, because to add this in, when you see people who come from a similar background to you debate, you can also see where you are lacking. And you can sort of fill in those gaps, right? So I think that's one very significant sort of point to bring in. You brought in another point, and it is very interesting because this is what I believe, right? Everybody, I think, who debates competitively and likes winning, like you mentioned, honestly, what they're after is legacy, right? Theoretically, one could say, and they are looking to sort of build something which will live or outlast them theoretically. Again. But a very interesting point you mentioned after winning worlds, after all these accolades, of course, is they're gonna not matter. Your Wikipedia pages, your YouTube videos, your trophies, all of them will gather dust, right? And it makes sense, and I can see what you're trying to say. And I think that's something which one can say, and of course that doesn't mean one should not sort of strive to achieve this, but it is a manner of you saying, in the pursuit of them, you look at sort of these achievements as the end all and be all, but once you've achieved them in reflection, you become a more refined person who realizes, right? And I think it's such a journey to go through and hear you speak, because as I hear you speak, I see like 2 Davids come through, one pre-worlds and one post-worlds. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right? Very interesting, very, very fascinating to say the least. And okay, there's another point you mentioned. You mentioned, again, that people will forget you. I'm just adding these thoughts in. For anyone who's from the Indian audience, you might relate to this. In the context of leadership, one of the leaders in India who people really think about is like MS Dhoni, who's actually a cricketer, right? And on the day that he retired from the sport after winning all the World Cups there were to win, being one of the most decorated cricketers, he posted a song saying मैं पल दो पल का शायर हूँ, which basically meant I'm a person who is only here for a couple of seconds, right? And my legacy will last only a couple of seconds, and it sort of imbibes that spirit, and I think it's very interesting.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that? I know I've given a commentary, but still.
I think every person who starts debate,
Yeah.
I think deep down in their hearts,
Yeah.
has a little bit of time where they start to think, this could be it. Like, the appeal of debate as a sport is that it's not like basketball, right? Where like, at some point you're just not tall enough, right? Or you'll have to hit the gym if you want to win this game, or you can't back them down and get in the paint, right? And it's like that for a bunch of other sports. But the appeal of debate is that like you've got all the words, you feel. There is the constellation of letters which become words, which become sentences. Some combination of those words will let you win this round, for sure. Like they exist, right? If you start a debate and you're in a room with like a world champion or whatever, you can still give that speech. It's there. And I think everybody who becomes great at debate has a little bit of arrogance to look at everybody before them and think, I could do better.
Facts.
It's like that line from Conclave, which is, yeah, you say you don't want to be the Pope, right? But like, everybody, when they became a cardinal, secretly in their heart, decided on the name that they would choose when they became the Pope. I think it's similar. I think everybody has their own little arrogance, their own little voice that says, you can be great. And I think it's important to nurture that voice as an individual achiever. In my career, I was in many ways very ambitious. As a freshman in Ateneo, I was asked by one of the seniors, Ignacio, who also was in the World Finals, and he was like, "What's your long-term goal for debate?" And I was like, "Win Worlds." And I figured, right, dreaming is free, right?
Yeah.
Dreaming is free.
Yeah.
So there's nothing wrong with dreaming as high as you can, setting your ambitions as high as you can. The worst thing you could do is not disappoint yourself. The worst thing you could do is realize you could have dreamed higher after everything's said and done.
Well said.
I would say there are as many roads to heaven as there are stars in the sky. But the thing about it, right, is that distant stars still share the same sky. Like you can choose to be ambitious in your own way and choose whatever goal you want. But in the end, if you don't devote yourself to the possibility of failure entirely and without reservedness, then you will fall short of your full potential. So even as a freshman in college, even as a high schooler, honestly, I was like, I think 5 years down the line, I could see myself winning worlds. I could chart that path to the heavens. I just need to have the strength to take that first step. But after, you're right that after all of that is said and done, I did muse on what it all meant, and I realized that it's important to have that arrogance, and it's also important to step back when you feel that your place is done.
Yeah.
Because you've got other things to do. I can't be a debater forever. I don't want to be a debater forever. I'm not a debater now. I don't consider that part of my identity anymore. And I wanted to be the best in the world at something else, computer science. Then I want to be the best in the world at something else, maybe running marathons, right? And it's like, what's stopping you, right? I think that's a mindset you can take wherever you go.
I see that. Interesting question. I'll keep this one short because I have many more questions coming in, and I'm hoping people don't walk in through that door and make noise. But you mentioned running a couple of times. You mentioned computer science a couple of times.
Yeah.
I would love to know, do you see similarities between studying computer science and running, for that matter, and debating? Because I personally am a runner, and I've seen similarities. Quite frankly.
I mean, I think a lot of it is resilience, right? I mean, my coach would always say that X tournament, so if it's a long one, right, like nationals or worlds, X tournament is not a sprint, it's a marathon. It turns out a marathon is also a marathon. So in my first marathon, I really was so fried. But I think it's like, once you've done what you consider to be the hardest thing in your life, everything else aside, well, not that bad. And adjacently, I would also say that debate gives you a lot to think about. The nice thing about computer science is that there's always like there's always a problem to think deeply about. So I think I trained thinking deeply before I realized that it would be really useful for the career I had chosen, right? Like, you want to deep work. If you're doing like a case prep, you want to really deeply think about the case. In 2-3 hours, if you're preparing a matter file and you're thinking about what arguments to prepare for this type of motion. So you want to really deeply think and work on it. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to think about it.
Cut that out.
Yeah, that's fine.
We're low budget. He is the world champion, but I am low budget. I can't help it, right? So
I mean, there's an ongoing tournament.
yeah.
So I also don't know why they feel the need to speak so loud. It's not, they can hear each other fine.
And on the show.
Anyway, I totally lost my train of thought. Yeah, so it's like problem solving, right? And debate is really just different problem every round.
Yeah.
So it's a different skill to learn.
I see that as well. Okay. Interesting topic, right? Actually, it's about a topic itself. Do you have a favorite motion that you ever debated on? And why? And what arguments did you run, if any?
If you press me to answer that question, like, I couldn't really give a favorite. I can think of like a few that come to mind. Over the years, I've become more and more a fan of motions that ask you to like reflect on what's important. Because I think they
Morality?
not really morality. It doesn't have to be about morality directly, but just like a lot of weighing. I think debates that are about what's true are a little bit less interesting, even if they could be technically more complex or involved. And I prefer to debate motions about, like, let's take what you said is true. Is this more important to people than what I'm saying, which we can also take to be true? There are a few that come to mind. One that comes to mind is the ABP final in Bali, where I gave a PM speech I was very proud of. And I think, if I recall correctly, it like got half the votes for best speaker final. Just short, like maybe too short. Could still be one best speaker in the final. But I was very proud of my PM speech there because it came out of a very drilled, well-oiled prep, and it felt like the culmination of a lot of years of hard work.
Yeah.
By this time in Bali, we were sort of cruising already because we just came from Worlds. Worlds was a week ago and we won it. So we were like, we couldn't really muster the motivation to be extremely drilled and hardworking. We were mostly resting from the difficulties of the trip.
I see what you're saying.
But it just felt like smooth sailing, and that speech felt like everything that I had worked towards. Like all those hours to build just one sentence, to build the most well-crafted sentence you can. All those hours of case prep to get into one bullet point, one structure reason. All that felt worth it because it was one of the few times where giving a final speech after I gave my PM speech, I thought, well, we won.
Yeah.
And you get a sense for that once you've been in enough finals, which is you have a sense for the spirit of the room. You sit down after your speech and you're like, I killed it.
Yeah.
And there's no speech that can come after me that will defeat. Yeah. That I think is what comes to mind.
Very interesting. Okay, let's see. I think I would love to know your something which is now less related to debating perhaps, but more related to your career. You know, what are you planning to do in the future? And you've also mentioned, you mentioned you're retired from debating, but then again you're so involved now with Sophia Worlds as well, right? So I'd love to know, both of these aspects of your life. One is career, so basically path forward, career, and second, what's the path forward for debating?
Yeah, I think Sophia is going to be my last serious involvement in competitive debate. Afterwards, I would mainly debate in a comp once every 2 or 3 years. Just come back in case I have a friend who wants to go, or just debating is also one of the few ways you can get the alumni of Ateneo to come all together at the same time. They're all so busy otherwise. Just come back every now and then, but otherwise I will mostly be done after Sophia. In terms of my career, I'm not sure anymore if I want to do the PhD. I mean, when you're watching this video, you will now know what I'm up to. I think I will probably get a job. I'd like to work in AI safety research.
Very interesting.
Yeah, so I think it's the most important problem in the world. I think it's a very interesting problem, so it won't be technically boring. It'll have a lot of challenges. And I also think that the impact is pretty straightforward, which is that if you make progress in this problem, it's sort of like making progress in climate change research before the Industrial Revolution, which is you have the potential to avert extreme damage to the world and like the future of humanity.
I see what you're saying. I think the last 3 months of my life have been invested in just learning about how sort of legal reforms can take place where AI is concerned, especially related to prompt injection attacks. So it's been quite interesting. I see what you mean. You mentioned, that you're not sure about your PhD. So was there a plan for a PhD before?
I was mulling it over.
Yeah.
But if I end up with a research job, that would be the end point of a PhD anyway. I don't plan on staying in academia, whether it be in a PhD or not. I plan to do work in an industry lab or in an industry setting where we're working with like models that people use, where we're evaluating them or something.
Right. And what are your thoughts on the debating circuit in Philippines, in Asia, and world? So we're going sort of 10. And why do you think certain countries sort of come up on top more often than others, and how can perhaps certain countries, which is basically Asian countries, come up on top a bit more?
Yeah. So I'll lay out the theory of what makes a good debate institution. The first is you have to have talent, which is really like whatever, right? Like you just have to have people willing to come and train, diligently work hard. I don't mean like they're naturally eloquent or whatever, but just willing to debate and learn. You have to have a significant enough pool, because if you've only got 2 or 3 people, that's not enough to foster like a culture of debating against one another, encouraging each other to learn. Then it would just be 1 or 2 guys. That's not a debate work. Secondly is you need like the architecture and the structure to attend tournaments. So the debate org must interact with other debate orgs and other norms, otherwise you foster bad habits in the debate team that will get exposed when you go to a major. So you need to have some of the funding to regularly attend tournaments, and you need to regularly cross-pollinate with inside your circuit, outside your circuit at different levels. That's why what I recommend my juniors to do is, if they're going for a Worlds campaigns, you have to go to a tournament in at least 3 other major circuits. Like it'd be good to do one in the African circuit, Australian circuit, European circuit, like one in Iona, one in Eastern Europe, the US, of course, the rest of the NA circuit. You want to cover your bases. In terms of what I think about the circuits, direct, I think that the Philippines as a circuit has definitely some issues. I think it's very lovable, and there's a lot about it to like. But I did think when I was debating, we did have some pretty bad habits that we had to train out, like using a lot of buzzwords, which happened because the Philippine circuit was extremely insular, and like formed a lot of really weird ideas around what's a good argument. And then, like, for example, like the drowning baby impact, where like you always have to make it about the most vulnerable stakeholder in the debate you can think of, which is like sometimes it's useful, but if you make that a rule, it's like, and there are some judges that they activate their brains when you say a certain phrase, so you have to say it. And it's just like really weird why you have to say it, like assuming but not conceding, right, or whatever. And there's just a lot of weird norms that we had to train out through international exposure. So that was weird. But otherwise, I think the Philippine circuit, I think we're in the process of rebuilding, because the high school circuit, I think, got shellacked by COVID. Like a lot of high school tournaments that we needed to foster debate talent in the high school circuit, which you need in order for the college circuit to thrive, sort of fell apart. So like IDEA was one of those institutions. It hosted like 4 high school tournaments yearly, and now it doesn't exist anymore. And now I think we're seeing the repercussions of that flow into the Philippine circuit. But otherwise, I think there's a lot of talent there. There's a lot of eagerness to debate well. It's just playing a bit of catch up. And you can sort of tell which organizations do well, which ones don't do well, based on the metrics I've given you, which is there enough like alumni support and presence to transfer talent back into these institutions? Is there like a regular culture of training hard and meritocratically? Then when you go to the Asia circuit, it's very diverse. You've got Northeast Asians, right, which have their own regional as well. I think what determines whether or not a circuit succeeds, which is the question you asked, right, is like how often they attend and whether or not that circuit landed on the right norms. So I think a very good circuit that doesn't attend Asians as much would be the Korean circuit, and I got to visit them, and I was quite impressed by their debating. But like they're a little insular also. And in general, I think it has to do with how expensive it is for you to attend and whether or not the circuit values that international tournament as much. That's why I think Singapore regularly is very strong, both because they're an airport hub, so it's cheap to fly, but also because internally they've got very good competitive norms that they debate against each other quite often. The alumni are quite involved. Malaysians also for a while were very strong, like back in, I remember they were really a terror to debate against, like Mifzal and Mubarak and stuff. Yeah, so that's what I think makes a circuit good. I think the thing that is required to jumpstart a circuit though is that you have to have somebody do something that makes people believe, right? Like there needs to be something that defeats the feeling of I can't do it, so I won't join or I won't go internationally. You have to make people feel like there's a real chance for them to succeed. There's a real place for them in the international tournament when they attend. Then for the world circuit, I don't know, it's huge. I would say, first thing you have to prepare yourself if you're coming from the Asian circuit is like, you have to get ready for like the racist vibes. It does feel, it's a little bit hard to come to a tournament where you don't know anybody and also like, you feel like you're losing for unfair reasons. I think some of this you have to calibrate against what's a fair reason and what's a not fair reason for you to fail. I think some of those reasons would be unfair in the sense of like, if you're getting like criticized because of your accent or because of how quickly you're speaking, when you feel like you're speaking at a reasonable pace, then you have to take those criticisms with a grain of salt and still believe in your debating. But a lot of the other times, it's a very valid concern from a circuit that just has very different norms. Like at the time, the Philippines was extremely heavy on proving burdens, at least when I was in late high school, early college, and I took those norms with me into my very first few tournaments. And I was really getting the comment, I was just proving something that didn't need to be proved quite often. And it helped me develop my sense for what was actually important in debates, which I now carry with me to this day.
Which was?
Knowing what needs to be proven and what doesn't need to be proven.
And do you have a framework you use to determine that? Or is it more intuitive now?
If pushed, I could. But a lot of these things aren't like compressed into easy rules. It's more like, for gender motions, you tend to make these assumptions. And these assumptions won't be questioned by the judge unless really provoked by the other team. Or for econ motions, you can assume that this is true except in these cases, etc., etc. And it's hard to map those rules into some intuitive.
So you get a better understanding through experience, of course, and just general knowledge, what assumptions will fly with judges and which assumptions won't.
Yeah. Which is why you have to debate often, just to get a sense of the meta. I don't think the meta is easily compressible into you do this, you do that. But I think it's about a lot of very heterogeneous, hard to generalize rules that form because judges are punished for doing this and rewarded for doing that, and debaters are rewarded for doing this and doing that. And they carry that into rounds.
If you, this is a random weird sentence, if you were handed an 11-year-old right now, okay, we're structuring, I know, and this person was extremely motivated to sort of go forward, aim for worlds, universities, schools, whatever. What are there certain books, videos, debaters, matter files, things you would recommend to them that they can do? And what is the general tip you would give them?
Yeah, the first thing I would do is I would really push their love for debate. Like I would expose them to videos that make you believe debating is a really fun sport where you can give brilliant speeches, where you can convince somebody of something. For me, one of the very first moments of this for me was when I gave a speech in high school nationals, and the judge was like, "You changed how I, like, as a person, think about gender." And I was really like, "What's stopping me from giving these speeches?" Right? Like, other cases are like speeches that make them really like think, how could somebody think of this? So really brilliant, clever arguments. And I would like maybe write up a catalog of different speeches that you can go back to when your career gets hard, or when you feel like you're getting lost in all these different improvements you have to make and some of them are contradictory. In the end, you have to go for the North Star. What speeches do you want to sound like? Who do you want to be reflected in your legacy as a debater? So there are a couple of speeches that come to mind, like Sheng Wu's World Final speech. Even though he didn't win, the winners gave speeches that were technically better, but were less sexy. Or
Happens more often than one thinks.
It happens quite often, yeah. So that Chengwu speech is a very clear one. I mean, it's pretty cliche, but the Boso final speech was also one of them. So that one's also really interesting. There's a lot of them. So if I could be pushed to give one, I could, but it mostly depends on like their temperament as an 11-year-old, like what they like about debating. Like I like debating because I felt like I could give really visually compelling examples. I could make a speech like poetry, but for somebody else, it could be that how all these different interlocking parts are. And in those cases, I might show them a speech by Tejas or by Ryan or by Victor Finkel, right? And these sorts of things work depending on the different kids, the different temperaments. So it depends on what they like.
Understood. Okay, I think I'm going to ask you just one or two more questions and we can wrap it up.
Sure.
And if you're not able to hear me right now, I'm going to sort of try putting captions. I look, the lighting is terrible.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
But it's fine. It shows that we've really, like, this was unplanned, guys. Like, I must add this in. I'm really grateful for him to give me this time. He was supposed to be judging a round right now.
Yeah, shout out to the Cambridge Union, by the way, for both giving us like a space to use.
Yeah, I mean, it's a story of its own, honestly. Yeah. I think a short question: movies or songs?
Songs.
Okay. If you were to choose a song to describe your debating career, which song would it be? And why?
That's a harder question than I thought it would. I just think about songs that I like. I like to listen to math rock. So math rock is like music with like really interesting time signatures. I like the song Versace Summer because I think it's like a song that's got like a really frenetic pace. I think it's really like a lot of it's like rage against everybody else that came before you. And I think the thing about math rock is that it's got a lot of instruments. It's a very interesting composition. Yeah, exactly. So I think what I like about it is that every time you listen to it, you can focus on something else and find something new. And every now and then I get an appreciation for something else that happened to me a few years ago that I didn't think about before. It's only really possible with a combination of so many different people. And there's a lot to said about individual exceptionalism. But I am the person who I am because I am a patchwork of the people that gave themselves to me. Almost like graciously that I was allowed to take this with me on my journey. The charting my chariot to where I ended up being.
Perfect. Thank you so much for this interview.
No worries.
I'll go for a better one. There you go. Yeah.
Better.
It's been a fantastic conversation for me personally. I know we had to rush this slightly more. We had to have slight logistical problems when it comes to the audio, right? I do not want to get into how we've set up a camera right now. It's been quite hectic, but the conversation was more than worth it. I'm sure people are going to learn a lot, be inspired, and do really well, and then hopefully, even the next world champion comes forward and says, hey, that one interview or that one conversation or just David Aspirations, right? Was somebody who made this happen. So
yeah. I mean, if one person is inspired, at least one, I consider that this entire hour to have been worth it.
Please make it worth this time. But just somebody write down I am inspired in the comments, and I'm done. I send him a screenshot. Perfect. Again, thank you so much. It's been
all right. Cheers.